And I now do look back on it and I think, you know, there's so many people that I've known that have lived such terribly kind of cautious, closeted lives because of this thing about them that's about who they love. It's just bizarre. To me, it's now the most bizarre thing. So when I stood up at speech day, it certainly didn't feel courageous. I was finishing up after 12 years as chair of the board of a school, you know, a role that I loved, and it was very emotional for me. And I thought it would be insane to stand up and say all these thank yous and not thank Abby. It was more significant than that though, because it was 12 months to the day since the marriage equality vote, and I made a comment about that it was, you know, I surprised myself. All of these wonderful, you know, I worked hard, I tried to prove I was good and I was good enough and I was better and I was good enough, and that at the end of the day that was all because of just trying to make up for this little thing about myself that I kept hiding and I kept covering up. And so I said 12 months ago today, I sat on my couch and I cried. I just surprised myself how big that marriage equality vote was. I told myself and others for years, doesn't matter, we don't want to be like the heterosexuals, we're as entitled to be as miserable as everybody else, but we don't need marriage, you know. And I sat on my couch and I sobbed that night when the marriage equality vote came through, and I said that. And Abby will tell you, this room full of like amazing, like kids stood up and later so many of them came up to me and said, I just want to thank you for that, I'm gay, and that just meant, and they do use the word gay, by the way, and I just want to thank you. And that to me was the moment that I realised we need to be more, I won't say we, I need to be more courageous, and not just for this label of mine, but there are other labels that I bear and for other marginalised parts of our community. Now the fight is for others, and we need to take that up.
So that's beautiful. Thank you. I think I should thank Abby there for the contribution that you made to that story. That was just wonderful. Thank you. And you know, I think there would be, and it's really fair for all of us, that when we step into the corporate world and business environments, there are barriers that sometimes get in the way, whether they're perceived or we've created them or they're real, and it's a little bit of all of that that's probably all in play. But you know, I want to go to Dave, because Dave, you know, you strike me of a guy, and I've only met you today, but you're this great entrepreneur. You do have great hair. I'm not hair envy on the stage. You know, you do strike me as someone who's really prepared to embrace life to its fullest and say it as it is. And I kind of want to get a sense from you as where does that confidence come from? Where does it come from? What can you share with us? Is there something we can all inject?
Yeah, no, it's a learning thing. I was a terrified human. I grew up on a station, obviously, and there were very few humans that would come into contact with our station, to the point that I didn't realise that there was a world. Until, I was 6, and I'm like, oh shit, there's all these other people. You know, I saw my first Asian person when I went to boarding school, and I thought they had Down syndrome. That's the reality. You know, that's how sheltered my life was, and very few people can understand station life, or any of us who live off the land, or you know, it's just so alien to most of you. I suppose that's why you're kind of bemused. How can I think that? Because I knew of Down syndrome with kids. Of course, we've got cotton near us. So there was a few of those young fellas around that would come to church, but yeah, I suppose where it comes from for me is I was terrified of humans. I had to go to boarding school at 9, and it was just all of a shock. I had no idea that there was this massive world, and I suppose when I would go to class, and especially when I went to an all-boys boarding school, I went to Toowoomba Grammar, I was terrified to enter the classroom. So I missed a lot of my entire education just hiding in a bathroom underneath the gym, you know, because I was just terrified that people would see me as I walked in the classroom. I was petrified of being in front of other humans, and it never went away. And as I became a farmer at 18 and then had my own farm at 21, I couldn't even attend the local days that the government puts on to educate us and to make us understand the deregulation that occurred during the Howard era, and taking away a lot of our safety nets that we had to go to understand, because as farmers we were very sheltered from the whole level playing field of planet Earth, and I couldn't go because I was terrified, and I'd lie to my parents that I'd been. And it was horrendous. But then just by chance, I ended up modelling in Europe, and some of these serendipitous moments occur that you think only occur in movies. But as I was walking down a catwalk in a big coliseum near Florence, I realised that no one was looking at me.
As you do.
As you do, yeah. As you
We are
do.
trying to bridge the gap.
Yeah. As you do.
Catwalk. That's like
But I realised no one was looking at me. You know, they were looking at the Hugo Boss that I was wearing. And I really was able to understand that suddenly I was a clothes horse. And that really changed it for me, that no longer did I care for eyes upon me, because they weren't on me. They were looking at the clothes. And at the time I didn't understand appearances or very much like that. So I just assumed that they wanted me because I was skinny and tall and something or other. I didn't understand anything about appearances. And so I just accepted it for what it was, and I go comfortable with eyes. And then, then certain things that happened in my life just made me realise, especially when I was bashed by a mob not far from here, after being on a tractor and listening to all of my politicians, who you get to steal those politicians around in your halls, say that we didn't exist. And of course I was an Anglican, so of course during the whole Anglican debacle of our faith here, saying that gay priests should never be allowed into our faith, all those sorts of things were going on. And then it all just happened at the same time, and I just thought, where is our leaders? Where is someone that's going to say, fuck off? Don't fucking bash me up because of something that I do in my private time that has nothing to do with you and will never affect you. So no one was doing it. No one was doing that at all. And as the nun taught me when she came out to our 30-kid school, and we were sitting under a tree, and she was teaching us about where Adam and Eve came from and why it is that we have belly buttons. She never explained that one. Or why Adam and Eve had the belly button in the picture she was showing us. But she did tell us that whenever you point your finger at anyone, there are 3 fingers pointing back at you. One, of course, is pointing at baby Jesus in the heavens, so of course never accuse anyone of anything. But look, 3 fingers pointing back at you, and that was the point that I decided, if no one's going to stand up and be that leader that I want someone to say that, hey, I'm a farmer and it's okay to be a gay farmer, or I play rugby and it's okay to be whoever I am. So those 3 fingers pointing back at me, and that is the only point in my life that I suppose I could say that that's the point that that there was a jab in my arm, and it was myself doing that. And that's, now I work with young people and empower them. It's never an ability of ours that we can empower anyone else. It's us that has to do it. And that was the shock that occurred to me, is I wanted someone to do something, just like, as we discussed on the podcast, that rubbish that flies past. Oh, someone should fix that, pick that up. Or, who left that rubbish? Well, fucking pick it up yourself. That's why I do what I do, because I'm the one that goes and picks up that piece of rubbish.
Thank you. That's right. I don't know how you top that story, Nita. But I think it's an interesting place that you have and role you play as well. You're a young politician. You are doing some great things in our community, and you're there representing. And I think, like Dave said, you're also in an environment where perhaps there's lots of different views that make things difficult to really stand out for perhaps being that authentic leader that you want to be. Can you just share with us, your story around what authentic leadership looks like in your day job, which is a very public role? Like, it doesn't get harder, in my view, than being that politician. We all have our challenges, be it work, be it boardrooms, be it sporting life, being entrepreneurs. But in the political eye, the media's on you, you got different factions. Can you give us a sense of how do you show up leading authentically?
Well, I think being a politician is unique because everyone has their view on you and they're entitled to. I think it's a little bit different from the leadership roles that I've played in workplaces and in campaigns before. And for me, the last couple of months has actually been a real journey relearning about my identity and who I am as a politician. I sort of started off really protective of being a gay politician, and went out of my way initially to do things that weren't gay. And because we have politicians who are gay, and they talk about their relationship with the community and their sexuality and how they got to be a politician, and I think some of them talk about it, what they're trying to say is they got to this point in spite of being gay, and that they are a politician that represents all of these different things, and being gay is just this side project over here. It doesn't make up their whole identity. And for me, it's completely different because I'm a politician because I'm gay. I worked on the marriage equality campaign. I ran the volunteer field campaign here in Queensland. And that was what, I guess, spurred me to take that final step to put my hand up to be a politician, because it was a tough time. It was a really hard experience for people. And I just sort of thought to myself, we can never let this happen again to a minority. And I wanted to be a politician who is gay and is proud to be gay and representative of the community. So I sort of am relearning about what that means as my identity, and I'm a lot of things. I'm not just a gay person. I am a feminist, I'm a unionist. That's probably actually the biggest part of my identity and how I got to where I am now. But it's interesting when you think about, everyone has their own journey and how they got to here. And I think that's one thing I try to tell myself all the time, is you can't judge other people's journeys or other people's authenticity, because just based on your own. And for me, being authentic is being myself, but also not placing a judgment on other people. I will say, I think it's a little bit different for a politician, because I do think we have a responsibility to represent the LGBTIQ plus community, and it's something that I'm very privileged to be doing, and that's a new thing, right? Like we've gotten to this point. I'm a post-marriage equality politician, so I'm in a freer space than any other gay politician has been before. So it's been a really interesting couple of months, and in my first speech, it's funny that you said that authentic is like a weird, like an awkward word, or you've been concerned about using that word. That was exactly the language I used in my first speech to explain that journey of being, a kid that couldn't come out, that went through a hard time going in and out and not knowing who they are, and to get to a point where you could be fully authentically yourself meant that I could be a fully authentic politician. And that's what we want, right? Like people are always saying that they want their politicians to be genuine and authentic. That's I guess what makes me kind of a good politician. I hope I am sometimes. But people don't want to see me putting up a facade of what I think a politician should be. They want to see me being authentic. They want to see me being genuine. So that makes my job really easy. I just have to be myself.
Oh, well done. I just want to pick up on the phrase you said, you have a responsibility, as a politician, to kind of represent the LGBTIQ plus community. Can I say, as a straight woman, I also have a responsibility to do that. And this is why I'm moderating tonight, because I think this is an agenda for all of us, and we all have a collective responsibility. We have it as individuals, we have it as community. And I want to just go to a time where maybe you weren't kind of leading authentically. Maybe you weren't really being your true self or being your best self. Let's go with best self. Because I think sometimes you got to be vulnerable to be your best self, because you kind of taking the layers off. And I know when I started, I'm a Canadian, I'm an Italian, Canadian, Australian, sometimes that's a bit much. Talk with my hands a lot. But when I arrived here and I worked for a really blokey company, the very first thing this one senior guy said to me was, "What's a girl like you doing in a sleazy industry like this?" And I was 25 and I was terrified. And I remember just looking at him going, please don't lose words right now. And the only thing I could think of was giving it a bit of class. sport, I was known as the skirt. So bring it on. But you know, it's hard, it's vulnerable. And I want to just ask you, and I'd like this, you all answer this one, you know, maybe in a couple of sentences. When weren't you leading authentically, and how did you feel? And did you know you were not leading authentically? Were you adjusting your language, who you were hiding a little bit? You mentioned it a little bit, Elizabeth. But can you give us a time when that might have been the time for you?
I mean, firstly, I'll say I don't think I was consciously inauthentic, because we're just trying to be the best I could be at that given time. Now, for me, imagine, so 24 years ago, we won our first Olympic medal, Kerry and I, and we were in a space where Kerry thought I was gay. I was trying to work it out, so she was telling me I was gay, and I'm like, really? What's that mean? You know, trying to work that out. She's trying to label me, and then someone would come in and say, Kerry would say, this is my partner, not like that, right? So she was starting to feel that guilty by association. She would declare she wasn't gay, even though I was. And we played in a bikini, right, 25 years ago, in a sport. So I dressed like a boy. I grew up kind of wanting to be a boy and played with all the boys. So my 10th birthday party, I had 10 boys. And then at the age of 13, they say, you've got to kiss a boy. I'm like, really? That's disgusting. So, but I didn't have relationships with the girls either, because my sport, I would kick the football further than the boys, I'd hang out with the boys, we were mates, and then all of a sudden I had to now talk to girls. It was like the most confronting time in my life. So what I did was become more athletic and become more studious. So I was a straight A student and a TE score of 990, which is the OP of 1, and really excelled in my sport, was how I created that self-love. And I grew up in an environment where my grandfather, he wouldn't ask, did you win? He would ask, how much did you win by? So it was a constant drive for being the best. And that's how I got my love. So in answer to your question, the time was in a sport where it became an Olympic sport all of a sudden, going from winning a water bottle and a hat, with my dad saying you can't play beach volleyball, there is no future in it, you won't make any money, go to university and get your degree, because I was an OP of 1, you should go and do that. And here we were trying to make our mark as athletes, we were trying to get some sponsors, and the sponsorship world where all the dollars were beer, run by males, chauvinistic, that wanted us to show up in our bikini. And then would ask, can I get the sand off you? Right, so that was a time where you're like, of course, if you sign the check, right? But quick, make it quick. So yeah, it was that whole, and I would justify that was okay, because I kind of needed, I was prostituting myself and wearing Foster's Light Ice on my bum as our first spot. I didn't drink beer, so now I was inauthentic as well. I'm like, I can't really put them on my bum, but there's no one else here with any money. Like Suncorp wasn't around right then giving us any money.
If I worked for Suncorp at the time, I'd be giving them money.
However, the key was they were at the end. So in the Olympic, we signed a contract with Suncorp 6 months before the Olympic gold medal. Really cheap. They were really cheap. Right? However, we managed to, this is my most authentic moment, we managed to sign a line at the bottom of the contract, because Kerry and I looked at each other. It was only, I'm going to tell you, it was $15,000, right? That was the deal, each. Lucky it was each. Usually we split it. And we hadn't won the gold medal at this point. I said to Kerry, what if we win this thing? It's got to be way more than that. I said, let's put in a $50,000 gold medal bonus. And so we hand wrote it down the bottom. If we win gold medal in Sydney 2000, $50,000 bonus. And I'm sure the executives went, yeah, right, whatever. Happy days.
And there's the business head coming out, right? Here's the silent businesswoman coming out. Well done. Love that story. Thank you. Andrew, for you?
Oh, look, I think probably for most of the middle of my career, it's sort of interesting. I came out in a blaze of sort of glory and then sort of went back in the closet as I came back into the corporate sort of world. So
Yeah.
I did, as you mentioned, I spent some time, I was a trained accountant, very boring. The most boring one, because I've got the really boring shoes, I've noticed.
I've got competition.
Yes, she's got the best shoes, so you can tell me, accounting boring type. But then I did sort of come out in a blaze of glory. I ended up, after realising accounting was going to be too boring, I lived overseas for a while. Partly I need to get away from my father, who's a brilliant man, but trained as a Catholic priest, and you can imagine his views on homosexuality, etc. when I was young, and we argued about lots of things as the firstborn, and he's the firstborn, so it's really, head to head. And he would have agree to disagree on every single issue except that one issue. So at 13, when I was arguing on that, just because I was arguing as you do at 13, he would say, on this issue of homosexuality, we cannot agree to disagree. This is wrong, absolutely morally, and so that was a really difficult sort of thing. So I went away and lived in England, worked as an accountant for a while, and then came back, and I ended up becoming an environmentalist because, when you lose your religion, they say, well, you go somewhere else. It's usually the environment movement back then, because it's the new religion. So I used to joke, I ended up chairing the Wilderness Society, which was sort of a bit of a rat bag, great organisation back then. And I used to, for a joke at board meetings, I used to say, hands up all the ex-Catholics, and we'd all put our hands up. Because it was where everyone went to, the environment movement. But that at least allowed, that sort of environment, of course, allowed you to come out. And then I eventually ended up as the youngest ever actually principal private secretary in the Senate, back in years ago in the 90s, when the two Green senators held the balance of power in the Keating years. And they were the West Australian Greens, as you said, they weren't the Australian Greens then, and they'd actually taken one of the seats, Joe Valentine, who was the Nuclear Disarmament Party, had actually become a Green, so that's how the Greens eventually got into Parliament and then moved on. And we had a great opportunity to be in balance of power over the Tasmanian laws. But I suppose after I then went, politics, I really have an enormous amount of respect because it's a crazy world. And lots of stories which we can talk about at the bar about what can go on inside politics. There's the front of the show, and then what is going on behind in terms of people's sexuality is all over the shop. It didn't matter who, which party, go to a gay club, it was on for young and old. So
I think we've just recruited politicians.
This was the 90s, so who knows? Maybe it's changed now, much more up to date. Anyway, so I did actually then go back into the closet really when I decided that politics wasn't for me. I couldn't get enough change. Sort of really, it was going to be a long game, and so the business was the place for change, and I came back. So really, I think Melbourne is a very conservative place. As much as I love it to death, it's my family's home, and all the rest of it. Do good coffee, and we do have a gender and sexuality commission, which is fantastic. Those sorts of things, but it's very conservative. So I think I struggled with, and I have what is not uncommon amongst gay men from my era, maybe it's other eras of internalised homophobia, they call it, where basically you hate gays, even though you are one sort of thing. But mainly it's some of it's self-hating, or not self-hating. I think some of the panellists will talk about it, about having to learn to understand who you are. So I think authentic leadership for me, and I do have some problems with the term authentic, which we might get into, but I think authentic leadership is first and foremost about self-knowledge. So I did really much go into the closet in that sort of period, not intentionally, just because it was the way to work. And I think I'm hearing some nice resonance as well, is because it didn't need to be front and centre in the business community. But it sort of became problematic later on, just the torturous non-use of pronouns and various things about not saying, he or she or, all that sort of stuff just became too boring after a while. But also I just had a go a couple of times of I burnt out at one stage, and because my husband has and I've asked him whether it's okay to talk about this, and he said it is. He has anxiety, extreme clinical anxiety with episodic depression, based on sort of issues in his childhood. And so he was going through a very difficult time. So I was managing all the boards I was on, all the training I'm doing, everything going on, plus trying to manage him 3 bouts sort of in hospital, hospitalised for sort of months at a time. And I was just exhausted. And I remember standing, I'm a member of one of the very traditional clubs in Melbourne, where lots of clubs, all male clubs, so we can talk about that over a drink, about any issues you might have about that. But it's a very conservative club. In this grand foyer, we've got the largest sort of 3-tiered staircase, in the country, in a private residence. And I was just standing there waiting with a colleague, a very conservative member of the British business establishment in Melbourne, just chit-chatting. at lunch, and I was just so totally exhausted. And he turned to me and he said, "Andrew, how are you?" And I just said, "I haven't got the energy to lie." I said, "I'm really crap, man. Like, Peter, he didn't even know I was gay, didn't know I had a partner, he's going through this." And I just sat there and just waiting, thinking, in these hallowed halls, and someone going to come and tackle me to the ground in a moment. And he said, "My wife has schizophrenia, and I've been struggling with it for years." And I just looked at him like a real person for the first time, and I went, "Why haven't I been doing this in these sorts of environments?" And I should have known about it as well. I'll just say so briefly, I know we need to move on, is that when I was invited to become a member of this club, and it takes forever, like, sat down one day in front of one of our wonderful fires, and this gentleman said, "Andrew, Mr. Young Man, I've been watching this, 45 there, young man, I've been watching your career for 10 years, I think it's about time you joined the club." And known he'd been watching it, and I sat there agonising. I thought, okay, and he ticked all the boxes about how, all the things I've done. I thought, I've got to not sit here and not tell him about the gay sort of stuff, because I thought, I just don't want to go into that. So I thought, okay, at the very end of the conversation, I said, "I just have to say this, Adrian, this is a great honour and privilege to be offered into the club and stuff." And I said, "But, I don't know whether you know, but I'm gay." And he said, "Oh, that won't be a problem at all. Your Catholic stuff, that'll be a problem." We are fierce Anglicans, but the gay stuff, move on. And he was a really conservative South African, and I just was so I suppose I've learned that actually, and I've had bad experiences, which I won't go into, but, most of the times when you take a leap of faith, and you're in a community that you trust for some other reason other than your identity, 9 times out of 10, they go with you.
Oh, lovely. Thank you for sharing that. That was good. Within the same stream, but I want to just add something here, because I just want to check time.
We've got 15 minutes.
Perfect, okay. So within the same stream, I just want to imagine, I just know there are days I'm not my best self. Different environments, different companies, and I'm always very mindful the minute I do that next executive move, I kind of scan the environment. I look for people who are a bit like me, talk with their hands more, and I've got my beautiful Lebanese woman friend over there who's, she's like one of my sisters. We're both
Wallets, we say Lebanese
we're
in this
good.
crowd. Yeah.
And I feel comfortable, I feel safe. And we look for that, safety. Elizabeth, just in your circles and in what you've seen, how important is it to create those safe environments for ourselves to be our best self, but also for those that are around us? And can you give us some tips? How do you do it?
You did say it's okay for us to answer a different question.
Absolutely,
if we
I
don't want to
did.
answer your question.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm going to sort of answer your question. Those last two comments, I guess, got me partly to thinking as well. So how you create that space for others.
Yeah.
I'd have to say, because Andrew and I are dear friends as well as anything else, and we've talked about that authenticity piece too, and I struggle with authentic being enough, because, and I've said this to Jess in our conversation, you could not get a more authentic character in history than Adolf Hitler. You could not get a more authentic politician than Donald Trump. These are people who really believe that crap and live it and sprout it, and it's vile.
Yeah.
So I'd like us to talk more about authentically good people. And it's an old-fashioned word, but I would like to talk about authentically good people. And I think that's how you make space for people, is by some of those old-fashioned values of care and compassion and goodness and kindness and things that aren't frightfully fashionable to think about. Because if you respect and treat other people as, I love how you say you didn't have other humans, and it was a surprise to find there are other humans in the world. If you treat other people as humans, it's kind of really hard to go wrong. To give them, to let them be who they are. So I guess for me, when we're talking about moments that we haven't been authentic, that's that I was sort of thinking about, and I thought, I can honestly say I don't have a huge issue with the idea that leadership is, there is a bit of a mask, and I actually think that's okay. I have a uniform that I wear into the boardroom, and I love the fact that I get the excuse to go and buy my Pierre Dupredal suits, which is not what I like to wear in the back garden at home. And no, I don't, strangely, but it's a uniform, and I'm okay with that. For me, my moment, so my least authentic time, it was probably in the law firm, and I've said to lots of people, I slogged away for 15 years, but I was dying slowly from inside, because law firms teach you to value yourself based on 6-minute units. So today I'm a good person because I built a lot of 6-minute units. The next day I'm a bad person because I didn't. And that's a really toxic, unhealthy way to think about yourself. So I became a person I didn't like. But I can honestly say, I think my moments of most distress about not being authentically me have all been in the private part of my life. The number of Christmases that I went separate, not now of course, but the number of Christmases I went to my family and my partner went to her family. That's something I wish I'd never done. Those are the bits that are far more important to me. I'm okay with doing a little bit of acting in a workplace.
Yeah, okay, that's great advice too. Yeah, thank you. And how about you, Dave?
I suppose, when did I feel least authentic was when I was completely convinced myself that I was not a homosexual man. And what was it like? It was that tiny point that you fall off the edge of the cliff, that you're just teetering and you're continuously teetering. There is nothing that sums it up more than the constant feeling that you're going to be in the abyss, but no one's there to hold you back. And that's what it felt like for me.
It sounds very lonely. Like, you draw up.
Yeah, there was no one else that you could talk to. I mean, even at 24, there was no one I could come out to or even communicate with, because it was just very much so a sense that in my community out there, and that's my community, that the local town had 13 odd people or whatever, and everyone else lived on station. So presentation and front was everything. That's what we do as a community. We all get our certain outfit on when we go to this meeting, or we certain outfit when we go to the tennis or the dance or whatever. And so having a front is always essential. So it was ingrained in my being. And even at boarding school, we had a uniform for every moment of the day, except for night time, which is dangerous at a boys' school.
Politics and
crikey. They're all married with kids now. Not the modern version of married either. Now, so it was horrendous. It was constantly teetering on the verge of death. And as like all people in my community that was encouraged to do, it was openly said that you kill yourself, and you do it in a way that is a single vehicle accident, or you try not to affect the driver of the oncoming truck. You hit the third trailer or something like that. It's so I did that, but I couldn't kill myself. I kept trying so many times. I'd do stupid stuff on the horse, and I'd do everything. Couldn't kill myself. And what do? You just get back up and go, well, I can't do it myself. And then I've had several times in my life where people have tried to kill me, and if you can't die, you're like, well, fuck, I've got to live. Shit. All right, well, I may as well do this.
And I think we're really grateful that you chose that.
Thanks. That's pretty much so it is, that moment that you choose life. Yeah. And for me, that was getting rid of all that shit. Yeah. And no offence to those that are religious, but I cast that shit away too. And those people that told me that I had to speak a certain way. I'm a fucking Queenslander from out west. I'll speak the way I want. Teachers, all those teachers that I had from South Africa and from England and from Sydney. If you want me to speak like that, you can want all you bloody like, but it's not going to happen. So it was really that couple of points where I chose life, and it's like, well, this is who I am. Get used to it, motherfuckers.
And what I might translate is, that sounds very liberating and very powerful, and your energy is fantastic, Dave. So, we can put whatever label on it. It's
insert the proper words.
Yeah.
Don't use these far words.
As a corporate affairs person, I might just edit that. But I love it. Thank you so much.
But Dave, what's great too is that not only did you choose life eventually, but life must have chosen you at some point. And what you're
kept doing.
But I know. Well, clearly there's a message there, and it's great that hopefully the young people along the way don't have to try and run themselves into trucks. They can learn through your experience.
Well, yeah, with my young people program that I do now, which if you've seen Backtrack Boys the movie, if you haven't, please do. It's a whole new way of dealing with our unfortunate men that are falling through our system at the age of 13 to 15. But that's that's how I am with them. And you know, the coppers that come around, we had the Department of Education come around yesterday, and they're like, holy shit, this works. We have a 100% success rate, and that's taking boys from I want to end my life today, and they bash their carers, their mothers or their foster mothers, and all of our boys don't have fathers. So they are extraordinarily violent young men. At 13 years of age, they just want someone to say, be you, buddy, because everyone else is taken. And that's what they get from me. And that's what I've done with, you know, I had the politics bullshit pulled out from Ron Boswell, the bastard. Because no way is the National Party going to have a gay politician. Yeah, right. not an open one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that's the thing is we've all got to have that stupid mask. Where, you know, if you want to wear a Ku Klux Klan thing, well then go back to 1922. So yeah, so very much so taking the masks off was extraordinarily empowering.
And can I just say what extraordinary and important work you're doing? Because you know what, if a 13-year-old and my son's 16, you know, to think that he would be struggling at that point, you know, to know that there are, you know, your program to assist, to help, you know, that's just, I think it's extraordinary work. So thank you for doing what you do. I think it's wonderful.
Can I just say on that, we can all do it.
Yeah, totally.
Every single one of us, you know, yeah, you can get up and, you know, do a video that gets seen by 64 million people, and what a great little excitement buzz that must be for your ego. But you can do it every single day by just being exactly what you said, kind and compassionate. And if you disagree with someone, you know, I was in America last week and they were all Trump supporters, crossed. I mean, they were all wearing their stupid bloody hats. But that's okay. Like, there is nothing wrong with someone having a different opinion. It doesn't mean that anyone's going to die.
Yeah.
We just have different opinions. And so if someone has an opinion that, you know, my son is shit and he'll never make anything of himself, well, that's your opinion.
Yeah.
But you know what? That kid can have his own opinion too, and if he wants to make something of his life, get the hell out of the way, because he's running his own race, and no one else needs to be in his lane.
Yeah, agreed, totally. Yeah. Join the conversation with us. Give us a time where, you know, maybe you weren't that authentic self, that, you know, there was a barrier there, something was getting in the way. Just want to get a sense of that kind of feeling as to where you maybe weren't your best self, and that kind of liberating moment. Or was it just always there?
No, it definitely wasn't. I had this bohemian university experience because I went to University of Wollongong, and I deliberately wanted to go to a uni away from home because I grew up in a home of family violence, and so to get out was a big deal. And I think part of it also was needing to find my own identity. And when I was 16, I came out to my mum, and she said in a letter to me that she was really disappointed because she'd never be able to see me walk down the aisle. And that kind of had a really big impact. And I learnt later on in life that what she was really saying was she was disappointed in, not in me, but in the situation, in the world, the way it was at the time. So I ran off to university and had this like amazing, I studied poetry and like creative arts. I did nothing that was going to get me a job afterwards. Racked up a HECS bill, and it was fantastic. And one of the first political things I ever did was at uni. We occupied a room because they wouldn't give us a queer space on campus. So we, a woman was in there late at night. Someone had come past, put a bike up against the door and threatened to set the room on fire. And it was pretty awful. Like she was terrified for her life. So we said, give us a room on campus where there's security, and the uni wouldn't give it to us. So I'm just this new kid, fresh out of school, with these older queers, and all of a sudden we're occupying a room and the riot police are there, and I was sort of careful about being involved in that because I was a bit of a nerd, and I didn't want to get arrested. So they said, oh, you can be the media spokesperson out the front if anyone turns up, because at this stage we just didn't think anything was going to happen. And I said, yeah, no problems, I can do that, no problems. And then the news did come, and I was like, shit, I'm not out. So I'm going to have to be on TV. And so I kept saying, the Queer Association and their supporters to try to loop in that, maybe I was, maybe I wasn't, but I just stared. But actually, when I left university, it was fun. I kissed lots of girls, boys too, and it was a fun time. But when I went back to home, because I grew up in Western Sydney, and Western Sydney is one of the places that actually voted no in the marriage equality plebiscite. It's a place that's tough for gay people. We think, it's really hard for people in regional Queensland to grow up gay.
I'm in Western Sydney now, it's way worse.
It's really, really tough. And so I went way back in the closet. All my friends were getting their first serious boyfriends, talking about getting married, buying houses, and I just wanted to be the same as everyone else, and I wanted to not disappoint my mother. So it took a really long time for me to go through that process. I tried really, really hard to be straight. I wasn't very good at it, and I ended up I wasn't very good at it. And I ended up being in a bad place, being in a pretty tough place. And it was actually my wife, who I wasn't with at the time, who came up to me and said, are you okay? And I wasn't okay, and the fact that she had recognised that, I think, was one of the things that we bonded over. But at that time, I had aspirations to be involved in politics, but when I decided to come out, that was a decision I made, thinking I'll never be able to be a politician now. I thought you can't come out at 33 or 32 and then be a politician after that. So it was pretty terrifying, and I just sort of gave up on all those hopes and those dreams and decided I'd just, live a different type of life. And during the marriage equality campaign, it gave me my life back, because I got to hang out with queer people all the time, and these young kids who just don't care about all these labels, and they don't need you to tell them what LGBTI letter they are. They came dressed up and ready to rock, and were not afraid to call 100 people a night to ask them to vote for marriage equality. So I really got this new sense of invigoration from the next generation. And I went recently. I kind of had a a busy time at work, a busy time in Parliament, and my wife took me out for our anniversary, and she took me to a Troye Sivan concert, and I think it was Wear It Purple Day or something around that time. And I remember thinking right, I'm a gay politician, what do I say on Twitter about this? This is important. And I think I ended up saying, well, I went to a Troye Sivan concert last night, and trust me, the kids are fine, so don't worry about them. We all need to worry about ourselves, but the next generation of kids have got it sorted out. They're wearing what they want to wear, they're kissing who they want to kiss, they're not caring about labels, they don't need to be told, who they are. And I think that that's something that is really gives me a lot of hope for the next generation, but also makes me so grateful for the people that have come out on TV and done great things like that, because I watched you, and it helped me when I was a kid, and I think we wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for all of those people that came before us.
Thank you. Do we have video to play?
We do. I reckon people are getting a bit antsy in the room.
Are we getting antsy?
No.
Awesome. When are we going to get this panelist over back?
More.
Seriously.
Can we give it 10 more minutes, peeps?
Yeah. Can I do a
Where else would
I
it gonna
really
go?
want to do that one question.
I want to do this one question. So can I do the question or should I do the video? Your call, Jess. It's your show.
Do you want to listen to another politician or a really awesome question?
No politician.
It's a really great question.
I think we want the question.
Okay.
We can just
Because
skip
this
past
question
Watch
came.
it later.
It's just Trevor Evans. He's amazing. Okay.
For those of you who are interested, we'll play the video afterwards because it's a great piece. But I want to move to kind of a question that was coming up pre this event
Yes.
from the community, and it really talks to the transgender, the T in the LGBTIQ plus community, and they're doing it tough. They're having a hard time, and what Jess has pulled together was a couple of stats, and I really want to kind of dig into this and face into it. It says trans people, or the T in the acronym, are 11 times more likely to commit suicide than the general population. 35% have attempted suicide. 1 in 2 experience significant anxiety and depression. So the question I have for the panel is kind of twofold. And one is, what is the responsibility of us as leaders in really digging into this space and creating a more safe and supportive environment? And then what message do you have to any transgender person on what can they be doing as well? So can we just kind of give some ideas, put some perspective on this issue?
Yeah, just what, with a minute to go? Like, that's great.
I'm here all night if we have
Ironically, Sarah, my partner, we've been together 20 years. We have a little 4-year-old. She often asks me, because I always wanted to be a boy, but only because I wanted to do boyish things. It wasn't that I wanted one of those things. Yes, I wanted, yes, I'm a king of football and like tackle and like, swing from trees and do all the things that boys were supposed to do. Girls were playing with dolls, which I'm sitting it for the first time. Karma has come. My daughter is a princess. All she wants to do is play with dolls, and we're like, what? So it is potentially in that nurture nature inherent in there. So I never thought that I would want to go through the process of physically becoming a boy. However, I did identify as a tomboy. We called it that. And I was quite comfortable, no problem. Wore my shorts and shirt under my official school uniform, and as soon as I got out the house, I took it off. I was in shorts, and I wrote my own note that said, "Dear Principal, Natalie's in her sports uniform, sign love, Mum." I had it 365 days a year. I just kept changing the date. One time the principal worked it out. I went. So I've recently, my thought sort of is continuing to create that space, continuing to talk about it, continuing to demystify it, being available for support, a stand for that, so that at some point, if we go back to our gay status in the acronym, that the T will become just as normal, normalised. And I have a friend of mine who has twins, age 12, and one of the girls is going through the transition to physically become a boy right now at 12. And fat in California, which I don't know why I said that, but it seems more normal. But he is coping very well and has a very supportive, and I think it is the team, the supportive family, the supportive team, who you choose to surround yourself with. I would not hang out with people that weren't supportive of my choices and who I decided I was. I would just leave mid-sentence. If someone wasn't supportive, I'd leave.
Yeah.
I just didn't go back to that toxic community. And so I think that's something, if we can keep creating safe environments, if we can keep talking about it, we can single-handedly, one at a time, link arms and provide a safe space.
Great, that's wonderful. Andrew, any views on this?
Just very briefly, I think exactly, we need to have conversations about it. Like, I personally am a bit at sea about it as an issue. I don't feel I'm knowledgeable enough. I don't feel I know enough people to understand it. So I think we have to create those spaces. Ro Allen, who's brilliant, the Sex and Sexuality Commissioner for Victoria, she has said that most of us board people do not know the number of transgender people in our organisations. We do not know anything about their trajectory. She said you'd be shocked about the stats of when they do come out and then the organisation pretends it's all fine, and then actually they do get moved on. So the rates of them actually leaving their workplace after they have made it known or have gone through the process. So she said, we need to help company directors and leaders actually even have the conversation, because I don't think we sort of need some help. Just because you're gay doesn't mean you're totally able to deal with any, of the diverse sort of issues. It doesn't naturally make you ready and able to do that. So I think it's beholden on us to learn. I think it's beholden though on people, transgender people, but all people who want to have a voice, is just to take a punt on it sometimes, to just sort of have a conversation. And Ro was telling this great story where she rocked up to one of the bigger company directors' conferences and just started talking about these issues, about how we just don't know, we don't have any line of sight to these issues inside our workplaces. And she said another bastion of industry came to her afterwards and said, just help me understand this. And she said, well, what I have to do first of all, I do the alphabet discussion first. We go through that and just explain to him what all these things mean. And she said his eyes were bulging up, but he genuinely wanted to understand. And we need to help those people have that. You need to help people like me understand that we have to be open to that conversation, but we're going to need help too.
Yeah, thank you. That was great. Thank you.
Speaking from my part, I can't help putting on my hat as Deputy Chair of Pinnacle Foundation. I'm going to acknowledge the Queensland Chair, Wayne Porritt. Pinnacle Foundation is, so a lot of you won't know what it is, and it's about tertiary scholarships and mentoring for marginalised LGBTIQ plus youth. It's a brilliant 10-year-old charity, and we, like any number of other charities, are struggling with the big long clunky label, but it's really apparent to us, and one of our board members is transgender, and she's very clear that it is a different thing, and that we have to find language about gender identity and sexual orientation. That's what it is. Any of us that, I've seen the people with diverse gender and sexuality, well, that's heterosexuals too. That's a stupid way to describe it. But we have to sort of really understand it. I am also going to put in a plug for the Pinnacle Foundation event at Queensland Theatre next year, XXX, the first transgender love story on stage in Australia. And we'll be inviting you all.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think for mine, the only thing I'd add, because I haven't felt terribly au fait with the difference and similarity until we've been dealing with this in recent times, the language piece and everything else. For me, the only bit I'd add to what's already been said is calling it, and that's like any issue in workplaces, and I think in boardroom context, that's the most powerful thing I can do about any marginalisation issue, because people say stupid, thoughtless, mindless, closeted, bigoted things all the time, and it's about calling it, for the rest of us.
Absolutely, thank you. That's great. Dave, your thoughts?
Not being transgender myself, but when I was a little kid, that bit of skin that's between your ballsack and your bum, perineum, I thought I'd been turned into a boy, and that's what I genuinely thought it was, because I had 5 sisters above me, and so I thought that my parents desperately wanted a boy to finish off with, and so I thought they'd manufactured me as like a thing, because I had seen, I went to one of my neighbours, and like an hour down the road. And there was a show on 60 Minutes where there was this transgender person, this is back in the 80s, and I thought, oh shit, that's what's happened to me. They've sewn it up. And I had one, but now I don't have one. Because, all the girls above me were running around with a vagina, but I didn't have one, but I could see that I think I did have one. So I really did think that genuinely I'd been
stitched up.
And I suppose the one thing that you say to transgender people or any people is we hear you, we see you, and we're here for you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we should do as humans. The safe space between my arms will be the safe space, but between other people that are supportive. notice them. And, you know, look, if the poor bugger was like a couple of my mates that you know, puberty hit them pretty hard and they look very, 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 very blokey. But if they put a bit of lippy on and the wig looks nice, say that they look nice, notice them, see them, because they're trying their bloody darndest to have the outside look like the inside. So it's not about going, oh, for fuck's sake, just see that bloke fucking in the wig, Christ almighty. Notice them. Because at the end of the day, they want the outside to look like the inside. So don't act like they don't exist. You know, really go, you know what, you great. And that, I don't know if that's your absolute best hue of deep read, but it doesn't really match your eyes. But you know what, I know that the Queen, she has this really nice natural lip that you could probably use. Things like that, just know that they exist, see that they exist.
Dave, you've given us language too, which is awesome, mate. Well done, mate. Thank you. Beautiful. Advice? Ideas? Thoughts?
I think language is really important, and I just think it would be remiss of me not to finish off this conversation with saying that we are about to go through a time politically where we are going to probably have a debate again around trans people and their worth, around gay people and their worth, around how we intersect with religion, and how we are protected against discrimination in lots of areas of our lives. And I think how we got to this point, calling out words and language that are inappropriate, was a really important step for us, and we need to do that again. We've got a Prime Minister at the moment who doesn't want to have gender whisperers in schools, and it's important that we don't think, oh well, we got to marriage equality and that's great, we'll just stop here, because I guarantee that all of those people who are trans now, or who want to be trans but haven't got there on their journey yet, marched next to us for the marriage equality campaign, you know, made signs and joined the fight. And it's sort of our time now as people who are part of the community but don't represent that T to be a part of the conversation in protecting them. The media doesn't help sometimes as well, and I think it's important to call out language that's not appropriate, like the term gender whisperers, but also any way that we are diminishing the value of people who you know, see things differently and are living their life in a different way. Getting discriminated against at work is a really big deal for trans people, and I was an employment lawyer before I worked for a union, and it happens constantly every day. It's a really big fight, and if you can't get a job, if you can't hold a job down, you don't have dignity in your life. So I just think we've gone to a point where we can kind of be in a room like this and be really open and talk about our sexuality and use like woke terms, but I think we need to be ever vigilant that it's there are still fights to be had, and the fight we're talking about now is about recognising transgender people, so they do end up not necessarily being a different part of the acronym, but being a part of our community.
Yeah, well said, thank you. I'm getting a sign that's a bit obvious here. Listen, can I just say, I really loved the conversation. I was just, you got me right into every single one of your stories.
I've got one more thing to say.
Go for it.
No one has a bloody clue what's going on. None of us have a clue. None of us are experts. No one has a clue. And the moment you realise that, you know, that Donald Trump hasn't got a clue what he's doing, he's just doing it. But how cool is he doing it for him? But I don't know what I'm doing, I just do it. And that's the difference between someone that you go, wow, they've got their shit sorted. They're just doing it. Because there's no manual.
Yeah, so you know what a great message to end on. It's create the manual, do the manual, open the book, start writing the pages, get on with it. And you know, I hope that you guys got a lot out of this conversation. I have loved hearing all your stories, your advice, your ideas. I did say I would open it up, but I got so intrigued by this. I hope you enjoyed it. I do want to invite you to the conversation. We're going to hang around. We're going to have a drink. We're going to pause. Can I ask if you've got a question that you're sitting on that you want to engage the panelists, whoever here, let's create and keep the conversation going. It's such an important one. I want to thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have. Please put your hands together for this wonderful
Okay, guys. Now we have drinks and canapes outside, and let's stand out here. We have to stay here for a photo, just so you know. Okay. But essentially, I just want to let that conversation form the beginning of this network event. Let that conversation ease you. Let that conversation be something that you start off and talk to each other about. These guys are hanging around. I'm hanging around. You're hanging around. Please do that. And really, if you have any questions, I'd love to talk to you. What else do I want to say? I don't think there's anything else I want to say apart from, yes. If anyone has had, you can't really talk authentically about things unless you already acknowledge sort of what Nita was saying, unless you acknowledge the things that exist as well. And talking authentically and being a leader and being able to go out there and express yourself, part of that is actually standing for what doesn't work. And working out how to do that, there's no answers. There really is no answers, but you've got to work out for yourself what doesn't work, and really, whatever that is, go and stand for it and don't tolerate it. And this is the environment, and this is a group of people that you get to sort of discuss that with. This is a community now that I'm saying this is now a community. This is a Here on Purpose LGBTIQ plus professionals community.
Yay.
Again, it's not inclusive enough. I get told. So this is the community to discuss that. There are no answers, but please, I encourage you to explore that and go and connect with all these awesome humans that are in the room. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you. I would love to talk to you all, and go have drinks and food. Thank you.
You guys were awesome!
That's what makes you such an awesome photographer.